The future of, okay, this is what I want to see. The future of WoW. All right. There are a lot of quality of life improvements coming in 9.15, and a lot of people are excited about those changes. A lot of people have expressed some frustration that it didn't happen sooner. Do you think there's something in the feedback loop that Blizz can improve? We can do better listening to feedback. We can also do better communicating that you've heard feedback but aren't necessarily acting on it for whatever reason. I agree. Like, the fact that they haven't even said anything that they heard feedback on certain things was alarming in a sense. Whether they agree with it or not, like, they should at least acknowledge that they heard feedback on certain things, right? Or taking under advisement and keeping an eye on it. As the community pointed out, we've heard on many fronts going back to beta. In some areas we were wrong. In some areas we were wrong. Fair. The community said, hey, we think conduit energy is going to be frustrating to some. We're not going to have full effects we hope it was. Our intent was similar to classic WoW respec costs. That would have been a friction that made take each choice more seriously, but ultimately not locking permanently. But that's just an archaic way of thinking. It's so out of date, right? In practice, it ended up just being something that players, and we heard that from them and should have changed our minds sooner. Exactly. But I mean, they're once again, like, they're acknowledging it. This is great to see. But this kind of ideology needs to be, you know, part of their, like, just core, the way they receive feedback and things in the future, right? Other areas about watching the mainstream of WoW player base, the broad range of the player base evolve, watching how they're playing the game, what we hear from more, just folks who are content creators or high-end raiders, who we know have different playstyle. One of those challenges designing WoW is that there's a dozen different playstyles. I mean, sure, but I don't think there was not one upside at all to having conduit energy being limited. There's not one. It didn't help a lower portion of the player base, the mid tier, the high tier. There's not one. I've had this debate a million times on stream. There's not one positive to conduit energy being restricted. And I've said, chat, give me a legitimate reason why, and nobody's been able to over the course of alpha, beta till right now. Not one, right? So we hear from people who are trying to do high-end raiding, also push with keystones, having to choose one covenant, not being able to use two freely for these systems was frustrating. Yeah, exactly. Wasn't surprising. We knew that if that was your orientation to game, your min-maxing player, you're going to want to always be optimal. But as we articulated, the goal of the design was to push the core RPG choice. The feeling of a weighted decision or picking this path versus that path and having different story. But gaming's changed since then. Gaming has changed since, you know, this is a thing in TBC and Classic, right? Having different story experience versus what your friends experience was going to provide a better experience for a majority of players. I don't know about that one, but over time we continue to hear was, even those who initially appreciated that choice, that diversity of experience, months into the game down the line, once they played through their stories, once they'd seen it, particularly on alt, they too just wanted the ease of change. Yeah, that's fair. A lot of what goes on is one of it's a reflection of us changing a lot of the underlying philosophies. Okay, this is actually important. It's a reflection of us changing a lot of the underlying philosophies that have motivated our approach to design WoW. A lot of these changes, like I mentioned, regarding conduit energy are outgrowths of lessons that were taught to us by our predecessors, by the founders and leaders of the team. Man, this is lawyer speak 100%, but about the importance of meaningful choice, the importance of... Okay, sure. The reality is the way people play the game has evolved. Dude, this is what I've been saying for literally 2 years. Like, I'm not saying that like in, oh, I got you kind of way. I'm saying it in like, I'm so happy to see him make this statement. But like, gaming has changed drastically from the way that it was, you know, even 3 years ago. Look back to where the MDI, look back to where the Race the World First and the AWC were in Legion. Like the MDI had just started out. Look where it was then compared to where it is now. There was no Race the World First. AWC was, I guess, was maybe bigger back then, but you get what I'm saying, right? Gaming has changed, man. People see their favorite player playing Neck for a Lord Destro in the MDI, and they want to go give it a shot. Or they see Kyrian this, or Eventi or that, or whatever, and they want to give it a shot. They don't want to be gated behind, you know, a week of arbitrary restrictions for no reason, right? You know, what's the right answer for WoW player base in the game 15 years ago may not be today. Hey, this right here, I'm going to hang this on my wall, like right above my monitor. Like, this is quite literally like word for word what I've said for the past 2 years. Since alpha. Or a year and a half, however long it's been. There's some stubbornness, but clinging to those old lessons. Some things are hard to let go of when you're training and your education as a designer and a developer and team led to having this instilled in you. That's totally fair. I get it. I get it. Yeah, I get it. If you had told me I would be reading this a year and a half, 2 years from where we were in beta, I would be surprised. This is really, really good to see. We've heard similar things like this in the past with development and things too, and they've said this and then gone back on it, but like, this is really, really good to see, honestly. I think remaining optimistically skeptical is totally fine. for every single player, right? I think to a certain extent people should be, right? Because we've heard similar things like this in the past, but at the same time, I think it's really, really important. And once again, I know people are skeptical because we've heard these things in the past, but I think it's important, whether it's a gaming company or a person or whatever, someone acknowledging the fact that they made a mistake and they want to change, right? I think it's important to give them that maybe that little bit of a vote of confidence, or like at least, okay, a bit of optimism. Okay, maybe they can actually do this, right? If it doesn't happen, well, then you know what it is, right? But I get the frustrations. I totally do. Believe me, I've had a lot of them too, but I don't totally understand just the, you know, Blizz is coming out and basically saying, hey, we were legitimately wrong in our development cycle, and people are still angry at it. Like I don't totally get that. Like, I mean, they're literally acknowledging that we were right and they were wrong, right? In sort of a you know what I mean? Like I don't really know what else people want, right? Besides, like, obviously changes that are relevant, which, hey, is totally fine. I agree. The 9.15 reflects a shift towards more alt accessibility, more catch-up, more sensitivity, and respect for players' time. Trying to look at what sorts of activities are going to be interesting once or twice, maybe less interesting. You have to do with them more than that. Let's not make you do them more than that. Versus which activities have part of the core repeatable loop. Yeah, it's just fair. It's just fair. Yeah, things people want to get into without as many hurdles they have to clear on the way. That sort of approach is going to motivate how we approach next patch with the Shadowlands, which we'll talk about in not the distant future. See, this is also good too. Like, I think, like, the first step is legitimately having something like this. Having, like, okay, like, Blizz has legitimately acknowledged that they've made a mistake development-wise for Shadowlands, right? And they've made these mistakes for a bit developmentally, right? That sort of approach is going to motivate how we approach our next patch in Shadowlands, which we'll talk about in the not too distant future, and expansions to follow. Expansions, dude. WoW's not over. I don't have to go back to valeting cars. Expansions, plural. Oh my gosh, it's great. I don't have to go back to college. Nice, thank you, Ian. But yeah, talking about community requests, maybe stubbornness. THC hits with the copium. Okay, dude, that dude, that hurts. THC, come on, man. Talking about community requests, maybe stubbornness, is something like the cross faction raiding it more on the radar as possibility. I mean, it should be, honestly. I'd say it's a bit more of on the radar. Yes, it's one of those areas where a lot of things to solve, a lot of things to figure out to make it happen. But at the end of the day, if Jaina and Thrall are working alongside each other in the raid, which is quite literally every expansion, why can't Alliance and Horde players also work alongside each other in that raid, especially in that we know it's going to solve a lot of social problems? Yeah, exactly. I don't think, particularly trying to keep a high-end Alliance guild together in North America or Horde when Oceania. Yeah. So I don't think there's a good solution to the Horde-dominated, the Horde PvE dominance in WoW. I don't. Even if Blizzard made, like, faction and server transfers free, I don't think you'd see that shift. I think quite literally you'd have to pay the players or incentivize them to go Alliance. I mean, shoot, look at how Horde and Alliance Hall of Fame are. You essentially have incentivized certain players that don't make Horde Hall of Fame to go Alliance, but nobody really has. It's been a snowball effect for a long time, where Horde ratios used to be a lot better than Alliance, and the people used to do a lot more PvP Horde side, and to a similar extent PvE. So you slowly saw, you know, the Alliance portion of the I guess raiding base, or even PvP, shift to Horde. And over the course of the last few years, Alliance ratios have gotten a lot better. Alliance ratios are actually better than Horde ones, I'm pretty sure now, as far as like Sims go most of the time. But the problem is, most PvE based raiding guilds are Horde side, and having to uproot an entire community, a guild with multiple characters, multiple alts, going from one faction to the other, realistically another server, because certain servers are just completely Alliance versus Horde dominated, it's just not going to happen. You know, like, even incentivizing like transfers and swaps and making them like free, I don't think would actually cause enough of a shift to actually, like, you know, balance out the Alliance to Horde ratio. I think for multiple reasons, having Alliance and Horde being able to play together is one of the best things they can do for this game too. I really, really do. You know, I've had times where my friends play Alliance and I play Horde and I can't play with them, which doesn't feel good. I think that the Alliance Horde faction war thing, to a certain extent, sort of plays into the older methodology of gaming class design, I guess game design that they've had for a long time, right? It worked well back in the day. I think it still works okay-ish now if we're talking about like lore and things like that. But as far as the actual gameplay goes, I don't think it makes much sense anymore. You know, gaming's evolved a whole lot, a tremendous amount. I think realistically, this would be like As far as 10.0 is concerned, I could be way off. I don't know, but I'd be surprised in the next expansion if it's not a thing. I'd be surprised. This needs to happen. This is like one of the biggest things, I feel like, honestly. Judas, what's up? Moving forward with a good direction. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Talk about 9.2 a bit, but beyond that, should we expect a 2.5 or a 0.3? All right. Dude, this interview is great. Hard-hitting questions. Or there'd be a 9.2 and then looking towards next thing. We've been talking a bit more about the conclusion of Shadowlands in more detail in the future. Or we'll be talking about it more. Yes, 9.2 is coming, which we know of. You'll be hearing about that more soon. We do have more planned after that. But it's hard to say too much more without almost spoiling some of the story that's going to come. We'll have a lot of details on that soon. We want to be able to explain it in full context when I put what's going on. So, I don't think this wording, is indicative of there being a 9.3, right? I mean, I would assume regardless it's a 9.25. There might be a 9.3. Who knows? I would assume the answer is still no, but I would also assume this possibly means that you know, they're not really sure how they want to tie up Shadowlands compared to having a 9.3 as well. I could be wrong. Maybe there is a 9.3. I don't know. But what I think this means we're probably going to see like a dev deep dive water cooler, like what they used to do with like Shadowlands beta stuff when Ian talked for an hour on stream, where they had like a Ian lore kind of interview. Maybe even player like actual streamer interviews would be great. I think we'll see something like that probably within the next few weeks, I would assume. We've seen the story and setting for Warcraft get bigger and more cosmic. Some people like that and some people don't. I guess I wonder, is it possible to go back, or is the genie out of the bottle as far as size and scope what we're fighting? I don't think it is. No, it's definitely feedback we hear as well. There are some who like the escalation. We face Titans, but what comes next? Let's go through the whole cosmology. Sure. There are players who miss just being in an inn in Elwyn Forest, being an adventurer or a more humble scale. At this point, WoW as protagonists and heroes, you've done a lot more stuff. Probably never go back to being anonymous adventurers in the forest, which is totally fair. But Azeroth is the heart of the WoW franchise. I agree. Totally agree. You want to get back to that too. There's room to tell a big cosmic. There's room to tell a big cosmic scale story, and there's room also for more traditional core fantasy. That's not something that we want to lose sight of. Even going all the way back, this isn't necessarily something new. The first expansion for WoW was going in Outland. We had Drena coming, effectively spaceships. So yeah, sure, but we want to go. We want to cover the whole gamut. Something we think about when we're planning expansions as well. Maybe alternate between something that's more traditional and terrestrial and something that's a higher concept. That's fair. I mean, if you're asking me personally, I'd rather go back to the old WoW stuff. I think it's a good middle ground, but I don't need to be a space traveler or traveling through time and seeing, you know, like the shadow. I think some things are a bit excessive, right? In the end, if the PvE content is good and the game is good, I'll enjoy it regardless. But I agree. There's probably a middle ground they can find here. While keeping like Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor and actual Azeroth involved in things. I think honestly, man, like, I don't know, like the answers to all these questions are literally what I've been saying and what I've wanted to hear for a long time. You can call it copium, you can call it hopium, whatever, but I just think realistically, like, you know, I don't know, this looks good, but Blizz still has to elaborate upon this and, you know, stick to what they're saying here, right? Dispatches adding Legion time walking. We're getting Mage Towers back. Is the team thinking more about ways to bring back old content? Something we're slowly working our way towards. Manually retouch and update working this way. Things we've done over the years, like adding, scaling to older content. So even now you can level from 10 to 50 in expansion. Things like time walking. There are vehicles and steps to move us closer to the world. We can make better use of all that we built as a story. We're not quite there yet. We want to keep expanding these efforts. Putting more raids, more time walking system. A lot of discussion about what our outdoor world time walking might look like. Sure, that's fair. You mentioned earlier the game's almost 17 years old. Is there a point where it's just too old with too many story threads, too many systems, and reboot becomes too enticing to ignore? Man, these questions are hard hitting, dude. Like, these are like the big questions everyone wants to hear. They did a great job of this interview, honestly. I don't think so. We're always thinking about what's in the future of WoW, not just a year or two from now, but 5 or 10 years. Within this world, there are plenty of stories to tell, places to visit, improvements to make. Yep. We want to learn lessons and keep building on these foundations in a lot of ways. Having 17 years of content is a huge strength. I agree. We also need to be mindful of managing the overall bloat in our systems. It's kind of what some of the efforts we did in Shadowlands, like squishing and streamlining leveling. Yep, that's fair. Our intent is to keep evolving upon these foundations. We'll remove some parts that are old and crusty. Sure. Yeah. Honestly, like, this is a really good interview, man. They hit on a lot of points that needed to be discussed. Their cross-faction raiding, what's going on in 9.2, what happened with like the frustrations of development and like the Covenant conduit restrictions. This is a really, really good interview. I think this is good. It sets like the baseline. It sets like the stage for, well, hopefully some kind of like developer deep dive soon, but 9.2 to potentially be really good. Really good. I'm curious where they go with the game too at this point, man. I legitimately am. Removing the factions for players will also remove the 2 month alliance delay and opening crossfire mythic rating. I would assume they address that anyways, honestly. They probably, I'd be surprised if Hall of Fame goes live next expansion the way that it is now. I think it should actually probably be like just top 200 guilds in the world get it. If it ends up being 180 horde guilds, okay, you know, once again, I don't think there's really a way to combat the huge shift to horde as far as PvE and even PvP go. I just don't anymore. I think the best way is just to dissolve the faction barrier. I do. Morg, what's going on? Got a bunch of friends they want to do keys with an alliance side and I can't. Yeah, exactly. You know, I think for the most part, like there's ways to work around that, you know, like leveling an alt, doing this and that, but it feels bad leveling an alt to play with your friends, right? When your main is geared on a different faction and all that stuff, right? They said same things when they released Shadowlands, though they didn't change that much from BFA. No, I agree. I agree. We had a huge level of transparency in early Shadowlands alpha and beta with like streamer interviews, deep dives, like bi-monthly Ian, you know, water cooler talk, which is great. It's awesome. And then when the conduit energy thing came out and covenants that being swappable and all that, we stopped hearing a lot, right? They just sort of went quiet, right? But keep in mind, technically conduit energy was supposed to be like this. Technically, you were supposed to just like, if you got a conduit, you dragged it over and socketed it. Let's say I wanted to put combusting engine here. This conduit would have been destroyed and I have to get it again. You never had this like shared stored conduit system here. So they did iterate on that, but yeah, I agree. You know, I mean, the interview sounds great. It does. But the big thing is that, you know, we've heard similar things in the past, but we hear what's going on. We need to change our development cycle and how the way we design certain things, our thought process. But the big thing is like, they need to carry through with it. That's basically it. I think like Blizzard and most like WoW devs at this point know that next patch, next expansion, whatever it ends up being, if it's a 9.3 or not, it has to be insane. They have to blow it out of the water. And yeah, like I said a bunch, WoW structurally has, WoW like structurally looking at like esports events, once again, MWI, AWC, Race to World First is leagues and leagues and leagues ahead of where it was in Legion. There wasn't even a Race to World First event in Legion, right? All we had was we had, you know, I guess technically Sloot and Serenity started that up, but you'd have, you know, SCO or somebody pop in for 10 minutes. Hey, we killed the boss. All right, breaks over. We're going back in. 3 days later, hey, we killed the boss. We got world first. And then you wait for 3 guilds to kill the boss before you release your kill video, right? Now you've got orgs like Complexity. You've got Echo, Method, BDGG, Pieces, Aversion, Aster. These insane guilds, I'm sure I'm forgetting some, that are all involved with actual orgs running their own events. It's crazy. Like imagine that release cycle like the one we had in Legion with content every 2.5, 3 months. Like right now, you know, like the structure is there once again for it to be utterly insane and for WoW to like legit be incredible. It's just what Ian mentioned in this actual interview here just legitimately needs to happen. You know, some things like conduit energy and the archaic way of thinking about, you know, vanilla TBC spec limitations being like conduit energy, that it just doesn't work in modern day WoW. Gaming has changed. People see that, you know, their idol or that they see now playing this new version of Blood Decay or playing this, and they want to go play that, but they have to wait 2 weeks to do it, to swap covenants and swap conduits and all that stuff. It doesn't feel good, man. You know, 9.15 is alleviating a lot of those issues, and it feels really, really good. But once again, at the same time, that ideology just needs to stay in 9.2 and 9.3 if there is one, 10.0 moving forward. You know, it's really good to see. I'm legitimately excited to read this. This interview was great. They did a great job. There's some lawyers speaking here, but you know, they did a great job. It's just like legitimately, it has to be there. Like they have to do what they say they're going to do in this interview. They have to, right? So yeah. Is your react when it's on YouTube? I missed it. You can check the VOD. I don't know. It might be actually Poop Dollar. I'm not sure. Probably. I don't know. Maybe actually. I'm not sure. It might be able to. Maybe. I'm not sure. Possibly. Yeah. People forget about how much better 9.0 was. Probably. Yeah. Poop Dollar. Most likely. Yeah, I'll probably put it up actually. 9.1 being mediocre has led to revisionist history. Yeah, but I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, right? I don't think it's a bad thing, you know. If you get cross-faction mythic quest in raiding, we see guilds fall back to ally. I mean, the way I envision that is you can legitimately have a guild of either Alliance or Horde characters. That's fine. Like, you can just play whatever race you want and be a part of like one collective community. That's what I like to see. I don't know how they'd handle like multiple cities and things, but having like one collective community of like just Alliance and Horde, like Temerity. I could be a gnome, I could be an orc. We're just on Hyjal. We're just one group of players on Hyjal. And maybe they move away from having, you know, like one faction based city for Alliance and one for Horde, you know, like in new expansions. We have Oribos now. We've had Shatrath, we've had Dalaran before. Cities like that, right? Which, to be fair, I think Dalaran-esque cities like Oribos are much better having mixed factions. The game feels bigger, it feels more exciting, right? Compared to what we have now. So I think that's probably the best way to do it, honestly. You know, you got to decide what you want to do with Orgrimmar and Stormwind, sure, and all those kind of things, but that's, you know, cross the bridge when you get to it, right? So they announced that there's going to be a community council based upon, I guess, based around like prominent community figures, and I guess, you know, players of the game in general, and also like non-prominent community members too. You can apply for it essentially. We did talk about it a bit already. Yeah, I'll probably apply for it off stream, just because I don't know what kind of personal information they want in this. Yeah, I probably will. I think this is a good step. Like legitimately, it's been from somebody. Okay. From somebody who has literally created, where's this at here? Flashbang warning. Is it? From somebody who has literally created a massive spreadsheet with bosses, Biscuit, 9.1 sims, trinkets, shards, legendaries, crafting, night phase soulbinds, pages and pages and pages of feedback. I have 9.1 PTR documents that, you know, I put links to my socials on here, everything. I put hours and hours and days and weeks of time into every actual patch, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, flashbang warning. I know, I'm sorry. Not really having any like actual way to like avenue to submit that to Blizzard has been frustrating. And there's multiple ways, I guess, like we've known that feedback docs have made it to Blizzard and stuff, right? But not having like an actual avenue to submit that, or a way to give feedback, barring the forum, which is like, let's be honest, the forums is sort of convoluted and filled with certain things that are not necessarily as relevant as they probably could be. I think this is great. You know, I mean, look, if I apply to it and don't make it on it, hey, whatever. It is what it is. They said they're going to bring on like 100 players, I believe, something like that, right? From mixed avenues of the game, being PvE, PvP, Mythic Plus, pet battles, mount farming, I'm sure. It needs to be a mixed group of players, right? You know, I think it's a good thing, for sure. I definitely do. There's been systems like this or things like this in the past that have really been sort of like, I guess, a little hush-hush kind of behind the scenes stuff. But I think this is good, for sure, overall. Yeah, I definitely do. You know, it's change. Like, they've set a great structure for the change that players want to see. You know, now I get, once again, not everybody, you know, people hearing about it and okay, yeah, well, we've heard it a million times. I get it. I totally get it. But at the same time, I think that they probably need to give Blizz a bit of a chance to actually, you know, elaborate and upon what they've said here and, you know, hold to what they've said, right? You know, I know they've heard a bunch in the past about, yeah, well, you know, we're gonna do this and never do, but once again, I think right now, like more than ever, Blizz knows that they need to actually legitimately, you know, get back into the swing of things, because WoW is, you know, yeah. So I'm very happy to see this. I'm very happy to see both these things coming out today. Now, class tuning for 9.15, that would have been a nice post to see tonight too. But you know, you win some, you lose some. So yeah, I'm very excited. These are like great steps in the right direction for WoW. Gonna need that Ian that Ian sticker. You mean the Ian cutout? Hold on, boys. Hold on. You mean this thing? You're right. I do. You're totally right, dude. You're totally right. I should summon the fat head, dude. You're totally right. It needs to go back on the wall. I'll make sure to put this up before I apply again. I'll make sure. I'll put it right here. I'll make sure that'll get me in 100%.